On this week's episode, we talk about androids, implicit bias, why humans are an invasive species.
Yay!
Enjoy!
So, Lauren, are androids people too?
Amazing you should ask, because I was thinking about that literally every day for the last 30 years.
Fascinating conversation.
It is. There's so many ways to think about it. One of the things that I've been thinking about a lot in general is Alien. It's one of my faves, one of my most favorite movies. And even the prequel of Prometheus. So they've got AI intelligence in the future in the form of androids, and they appear human, they sound human, they interact vaguely human. So it's really good AI. So Ripley initially wasn't able to tell that Ash was an android. She had believed that he was human until I think he got a... Oh, this is going to make it sound like I'm not the awesome fan I am. I believe he got cut and then he was bleeding and their blood is like that white.
Yeah.
And at one point there's a very famous line where Ripley is looking at him very concerned after they've already seen the aliens. They've seen, a chest burster come out, and she doesn't ask, she says, "You admire it?" And he says, "I admire its purity." So that got me to thinking about the real differences between AI and ourselves. So we were kind of talking about the droids in Star Wars.
Yeah. C-3PO, I feel like... So the question of, are they sentient? Are they aware of themselves? Do they have a consciousness?
Yeah.
And a lot of times, if you've seen the movie I, Robot, for example, or, once we get to that point of the singularity where, robots are self-aware.
Right.
And they're creating their own thoughts and things like that. I mean, I feel like C-3PO is probably sentient.
He says a lot of things that make it seem that way. He's very, I'm going to use a word. He's very flouncy. He's very he's got that sass. He's got some attitude, which I don't think that if AI had the ability to think independently that it would be so sassy.
Yeah. Well,
that it would butt in on conversations or...
Yeah, because...
with its own thoughts.
Because he's got a sense of humor. I don't know necessarily if he intends to have a sense of humor.
Right.
I think we don't know. We think he's funny.
Right.
I mean, and R2-D2 certainly has sass. That little guy is full of sass.
He has a lot to say. Lots of arguments.
I feel like he swears a lot. And we just don't speak his language.
I know. I would agree with that.
But... you're thinking about, so Prometheus, help me, Michael Fassbender's character, what's his name?
Oh, gosh.
Damn it. Anyway, so,
we'll have to
but him.
Go back. I can picture him.
Yeah.
As he's watching the movie and he's combing his hair to become exactly like this character that he's trying to portray. He wants to come across as very human, but he has a very specific idea of human. I don't know the movie that he's watching. Do you know what it is?
Oh, Lawrence of Arabia.
Okay.
Yeah, so...
This is Mr. Potter.
And I just feel like there's, at least for the kind of android that he plays, and even, some of the other androids in Alien, sometimes, but I think specifically him, though, there's something that he lacks that makes him clearly not human. And we were talking about this earlier. I don't know if it's empathy. I don't know what it is. But I think it's becoming because he's mimicking what he thinks is the epitome of a human.
Right. And with a lot of the droids, androids, in Blade Runner and the sequel Blade Runner 2049. They're called replicants. There's almost an air of superiority about it. So it almost leads us to think that when humans are creating replicants or androids or droids or whatever they're calling it, that they are removing the things that make us most vulnerable.
Which make us human.
That make us human, and then they're giving them a little bit more. So maybe it's extra strength, maybe it's extra intelligence, the ability to do more than we could physically do. So again, the things that make us human. So I think of, again, I can't, this is terrible. I should have looked it up before, but yeah, Michael Fassbender's, his version
Is his name David?
I think it is David. I think you're right. But I remember the scene where he's riding a bicycle with no hands in a circle, and he's just kind of scooting along and then shooting some hoops at the same time. Like, that's absurd, but I thought that was very interesting because he did it so casually that they were kind of pointing out that he could do things that a human wouldn't typically be able to do.
And is that going back to Alien 4, where, because Ripley in that,
yeah,
right?
Why did she play basketball? Yeah, she did. She did play basketball in that one, but this was, spoiler alert, you don't really get spoiler alert. This is from like the 90s, because she's not Ripley.
Right.
She's essentially a clone version of Ripley, and then
and what's funny is
she's really good at basketball.
If you have ever seen the making of Alien 4, she actually did make that shot. Like, she's walking away.
I love her,
and she
even
tosses
more
it backwards, and it's hysterical because Ron Perlman is in that, and I love it because, like, he completely breaks character, and he admits it. So she's walking away, she tosses it back, and it goes, and he's like,
Weaver is amazing.
Yeah, and he totally breaks character because it's such a fucking awesome, like, shot. But anyway, her and her little shaped nails that are digging herself out of her little cocoon thing. But anyway, but I mean, sometimes you can tell that, like, even with, like, so I was thinking, what else has, I think everything has droids, like Data, you know, from Star Trek.
Yeah, Blade Runner's a big one. Blade Runner, I think you can get into the dialogue about, is it good for them to be sentient? Because when you get into, like, Blade Runner, the first one, or the 2049, they're not well received.
They're not treated very well.
No, they feel, at least in 2049, that they are deserving of rights and that they are not human, but they are just as valuable, but yet they're being hunted and they're being killed, and they have, you know, Blade Runners coming after them to kill them. And then you have to think of the first one, Harrison Ford's character ends up falling in love with
What
a replicant.
I don't know what the word Blade Runner mean. The words Blade Runner mean. What's Blade relating to, and why are you running it? I
would have to go back. So if you don't already know,
well, actually,
the movie Blade Runner and sort of kind of Blade Runner 2049 are based on the William Gibson book, Do Androids Dream? I'm sorry, you'll have to edit that out. Philip K. Dick. I messed up my notes up. It's good.
Electric Sheep.
To Android's Dream of Electric Sheep. So it's loosely, I would say it's kind of loosely based on that. Because they don't do or say everything in Blade Runner that they do in that. And I know that they go over it, and I can't remember why.
Okay, fair enough.
I feel like a bad nerd when these things happen.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
I'm like, I'm so obsessed with this thing, but don't ask me any questions about it.
You know what? But I'm like that with, like, a lot of Star Wars. Like, I mean, I can talk, but, you know, I don't know how many... So I've got the Trivial Pursuit for several different versions of Star Wars, like the original trilogy versus all of them and so forth. And, like, some of the questions in that Trivial Pursuit are like, how many engines are on a blah blah thing? And I'm like, hell, I don't know how many engines are on this thing. And then total nerds, like my boyfriend for sure, he's like, there would be 3 on that. I'm like, okay.
Okay.
Why do I need to know that? You
I
can't have a
guess.
conversation around that.
No.
Maybe you can. I'm not going to judge.
I'm
whatever.
sure somebody
Let's talk about how many engines you really need in space for things. Anyhow. So the whether or not androids, replicants, so forth deserve rights, that's huge, and that's a valid conversation that people have already started having, like, in real life,
right?
Regardless of in the movies. I mean, sci-fi, as we know, is a reflection of humanity and society now, but also gives us a snapshot of the future.
Right.
Like, hey guys, we need to start thinking about this.
That's one of the things that I really like about sci-fi, and especially any kind of, we talked about this in a recent podcast episode, about any kind of sci-fi that is based on a dystopian future where we've chosen a path that is available to us now, and it was the wrong path. Mm-hmm. So I really like that you can take these things that are happening now and then create, a what if scenario of what could happen or what would happen. Because one of the things, even within the last few years, everybody's been panicking about is AI stealing our jobs. Well, there was a really recent article that I read that was saying, no, they're actually going to create jobs. It would actually create different types of jobs that we might not have now, or additional jobs to support that. I'm going to be fine because the number one job that isn't affected are therapists.
Yeah.
So, and probably anybody that, well, not necessarily people that make food. I bet an AI could make food.
Probably
better than we do.
Yeah. I mean, this is sort of related. So 3D printed meat.
What?
Okay.
Is it really made of animals? Tell me more.
So it's, I can't remember all the sciencey details of how they put it together, but it's essentially the cloned protein concept, the protein from meat. So let's take like a steak.
Oh, I have heard of this.
And they put it into a 3D printing machine that's just specifically for making meat. Mm-hmm. And so the reason why I'm a vegetarian is because I'm highly empathetic to the point of, like, it being crippling. And so I've seen enough videos and things like that where
I think cows are cute.
Yeah, and so it ethically, that's where I have a problem. Now, however, to keep going with my reasons why I'm vegetarian and the challenges that I'm going to have with 3D printed meat. So, okay, if I know that a cow lived a happy life, they lived on a farm, they were treated well, they got to roam around or whatever, here's the challenge. I need to go and see that to prove to myself that this cow is having a happy life. The problem is, if I see that cow, I've named it, I've probably embraced it, and now I can't eat it. Okay?
Yeah.
Here's my dilemma. Now, so Aaron tells me, Burg, I have the perfect solution so how you can eat steak. He's like, 3D printed meat. And my first response was, but it won't have a soul. He's like, I can't help you. I don't know what to say.
You want to eat souls? Damn.
So that's a problem because I feel like, and this is where I kind of, the whole thing with, like, androids and droids and so forth. And it was discussed a lot, actually, in Star Trek with Data's character of, sort of being born, grown up a little bit. Like, you didn't go through all of the things. So this meat that's just printed right into a steak, like, it didn't experience, it never ate grass. It never experienced fresh air. It was just put into a machine and extruded. And so then why am I eating food? I mean, if,
are you eating food?
Right. And so, there are many cultures that believe that when you eat the meat of an animal, that you are eating its soul, and so you appreciate it. You're experiencing, and this is maybe one argument, this is definitely an argument that I have against animals that are treated poorly. I don't want to eat that animal's meat because if it died a horrible death, then I'm eating the fear that it had when it died, right?
And you're, like, contributing to...
And I'm contributing to that whole thing.
Yeah.
But, what about, like, in Star Trek where they have a food replicator? Thus, we have 3D printing now.
I've thought of this, too, because I've read about the lab-grown burgers that are somehow not meat, but they've somehow synthesized it enough with some amount of something. It's very similar to that.
Right.
And I don't know if I would eat it, because one of the selling points was that it would actually bleed like meat, and I don't know.
Like that.
I don't know
I felt
that
in
I
my
want
spine.
that. Like that's a bit much for me.
Yeah, like, do you need to prove that it, like, is that the thing that I enjoy about a steak, that it bleeds? I don't think so. But
I don't know.
anyway, but it goes along the whole lines of, like, so we're talking about sausha, which is purity, one of the niyamas in yoga. And I mean, the whole thing that we're talking about is, you kind of like, what does it mean to be pure? What is a pure human? I don't know. And these droids and androids are trying to replicate what it means to be human.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this one's tricky. So this is another one of the niyamas. So we're still talking Yoga Sutras here. And in terms of purity, I think that the knee-jerk reaction to that is being physically clean, making sure that you have good hygiene. And I think at some point that probably was part of it, because it's like a safety and health concern to make sure your body was clean because of bacteria and things like that.
That's where we have, like, the kriyas, but also the thing that you mentioned before where they ate the linen
and then pull
it's
it out.
One of the
or
sausha things.
Or like neti.
Yeah, but the neti pot and the ancient yogis, like, they did brush their teeth. They had the concept. They had, like, the little branches that would, they'd do that. So,
or tongue scraping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they did all that kind of stuff. But then also thinking pure thoughts.
Yeah, that's a real tricky one. So the idea is, like, the impure thoughts. So impure in terms of this would be, like, some of the things that we've talked about before, like anger, violence, hate, prejudice, meanness, negative thoughts. But the antidote to it being self-study.
Yeah.
So if you watch the very last one, self-study is kind of like the other side of that. So it's not saying that you have to scrub your brain squeaky clean and never have angry
That's unrealistic.
thoughts.
It's unrealistic.
Yeah. Like, I don't think we would be humans if we had that. But I think that is the one piece that the replicants or Ash from Alien or David from Prometheus didn't have.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that when I see exchanges in movies between humans and androids, it kind of makes me like, my empathy wells up for the androids a little bit when they're treated horribly, because they don't react back. Like, the number one, so talking about iRobot, though, the number one rule for a robot is that it can't harm a human.
Right. Like the Terminator, but only John Connor.
Well, right. Yes. How convenient. Just that one guy. But I mean, so, and this translates, I think, into also human relationships. Like, if something doesn't defend itself,
right,
then it makes me feel really bad for that being, and so did humans create androids to not defend themselves?
Well, right. Even if you go back to Terminator, so Terminators were androids, robots, however you want to say it. But they were built by humans to lack all of these kind of thoughts and feelings so that they would terminate. And you have to think of, if you're going to give a being all of these different abilities that a human has, but you're going to leave certain things out, is that ethical?
Yeah.
If you're going to create, at least in terms of Blade Runner, a replicant that is potentially, we don't have all the answers. It's all kind of speculative. And I've even seen, like, interviews with Philip K. Dick where he's like, I don't know. What do you think? Did a replicant fall in love with a human? If you watched the sequel, did a replicant fall in love with a human and have a child with that human? Is that a possibility? If we give all of these qualities of ourselves to this artificial intelligence, like, how do we decide what to give and what to hold back? And it always is going to come back to, what do we want them to do?
Right.
Like, what do we want from them? So, like, it's something that can further us as a species in terms of technology and all these other things. But if you give it enough, if it becomes sentient, at what point is it a slave?
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what comes in a lot in some of these movies, too, is that when there is enough sentience, they do feel like that they need to uprise because they have become enslaved.
Well, I mean, in Force Awakens? No. Last Jedi? No. Yes. I can't remember. All of a sudden, it's falling out of my head. So, Lando's... yeah, Last Jedi.
And Solo.
God, yes, that's it. My God.
Yeah.
They're all, everything comes out at the same time.
L
I can't.
something. What's his?
Leet. L337.
Yeah.
Yes,
She's
Leet.
very sassy.
She is sassy. I love her.
She doesn't take anything
No,
from
but
Lando.
she creates that rebellion. So, like, she
and
chose
she
one.
loves him, I think.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
They love each other. Like, so but, like, she talks to the point of, like, in the beginning, we see her yelling at the droids that are, like, cage fighting, you know, and she's like, come on, be better than this or whatever. I can't remember what she says.
Yeah.
And then, you know, she frees them when they're on that slave planet. Can't remember. Anyway. Well,
You don't
know
have
what
to
I'm talking about. Yeah.
remember all the planets.
Yes. But that's the thing of it. Like, how I'm interested in how she became clearly sentient versus, like, the little trash can droids, you know, that are like, burp, burp, burp. I'm just
Or
the
even
one that...
BB-8. BB-8 seems a little bit limited comparatively, but we don't know exactly what BB-8's saying. So.
Right. And BB-8 reminds me of sort of like my cats, you know, where it's like...
Yeah, that's a good comparison.
They're like kind of like a little pet.
Yeah.
Like, yes, they're aware, like, my cats yell at me for dinner. They want to go outside.
They can see does yours do the thing where if they could see the bottom of the bowl, but there's food around the bottom
my God.
of the bowl, they scream?
Oh my God. And Moose
That's
won't
my
use the
life.
litter box if it's a little bit dirty.
Yeah.
So then he yells. He stands in the bathroom and he yells about it. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's 3:00 in the morning. I'm not going to clean your litter box. And then
Grow
I
some
get up and I
thumbs,
do it.
dude.
For real. If you want to go outside, get some thumbs.
Or figure out a system.
God, he can pull the flap up and go out.
Nice.
So when they're trapped inside, he can pull the flap.
Well,
towards
then
him
he
and
can get it together and scoop his poop.
I agree.
Moose, if you're watching, get it together.
Right. I don't know where we were going with that.
Well, BB-8 was like a cat.
Oh,
so
yeah,
maybe
that's right. Thank you.
maybe are there droids or AI that is maybe not supposed to be necessarily equivalent to human, but
different
maybe
roles.
kind of like, or even, this is like old Doctor Who. He had like the robot dog.
Oh, yeah. Right.
I can't think of the name of it, but yeah, definitely had a robot dog companion in like the older episodes of Doctor Who. Like,
Right.
Why not? Why not a robot dog?
Well, and I think, you know, that's... I don't know why that made me think of in Castaway. Tom Hanks' character has the volleyball Wilson. You know,
Wilson, yes.
You know, and
is Wilson a sentient being?
I mean, I don't know, but you know, I feel like at some point, or you know, in some instances, humans are making these droids and these little bots as companions for ourselves, like like the robot dog, and just as you said earlier, like, we're making them for ourselves.
Right.
So, you know, the thing that I lack, or the thing that I need most, you know, like, I need somebody that's going to make me dinner. Honestly. I mean, Erin's a great cook. No offense to that. But, like, if I had $1 million, like, I would hire a chef.
Yeah, a chef. Somebody to wash my dogs and trim their nails.
Right.
That they weren't afraid of.
But I would treat them well.
Yeah.
I would pay them, or what? But what if I had a droid to do that?
Yeah. Even going like full like Jetsons, like Rosie. Was Rosie a slave? I don't know.
I hope she got a choice in it.
Yeah, because I doubt she was getting paid. What would she be getting paid? Like
oil?
Oil? Yeah, that doesn't seem right.
What do droids want?
A little sketchy, if you ask me. But she seemed very happy.
She did.
But maybe she was programmed to be happy. Oh my God, I can't handle this.
We're spiraling. So maybe this is a good point to talk about our sponsor.
Yes.
CS Coffee. And you can check them out. csinstant.coffee. And if you plug in the code TREE, TREE, you'll get 20% off of your first purchase with them. That's a pretty sweet deal.
Yeah. If you want to check them out on Instagram, it's at a little @ symbol c.s.coffee. So this is completely compostable. It is environmentally friendly. For every purchase you make, they're going to plant a tree. So this is dissolvable in water, so it's in a little packet. It's powdered. You could pour it into your hot water while you're camping or hiking or doing anything outdoors. If you need to have a backpack with you and you have limited stuff to take, you don't want to bring like the whole French press and like grind the beans while you're camping. I mean,
maybe, but I'd rather have instant coffee.
Yeah,
honestly.
just add the water, could add it to your protein shake, and go.
There you go.
So we're talking about droids, replicants, androids, robots, however you want to say it. Even your Roomba, if you have a Roomba.
Gosh, some of those are really cute, actually. Like, actually, Dr. Bartlett downstairs, she has a generic Roomba, and it just like she would bring it up here when we first moved in. Mm-hmm. She brought it up here, and this is when I was working by myself. She hadn't moved in yet, and I actually felt like there was another being in here with me, and like it would come close to my feet, and I was like, "Oh, excuse me,
pardon me, Roomba."
Yeah, and I would like give it space to do its thing and keep going. And
it, if you have one, I had a coworker at another job that had one, and it would just make its run around the house. But if it ran into any trouble, it would text her. But the way that they sent the text was really adorable. It was like, "Ma'am, pardon me, I seem to be stuck," and then it would be like at the top of the stairs, and it would like send her a text to let her know that it needed help. I'm like, oh my God,
that's adorable.
But yeah,
so cute.
we were kind of thinking about. So when humans create these stories, whether they're movies, books, real things, when we create these better than us in some way beings, this artificial intelligence of some kind, we're shining a light on what we like or don't like about ourselves as humans. And if we're creating them in a way that we're adding things that we wish we had, I think that's a really interesting type of self-study, self-reflection too, to determine where we feel like we have strengths and where we have weaknesses just as humans.
Yeah, like for like a Roomba, like I'm not good at vacuuming, therefore
I don't want to vacuum.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but in looking at like for example, the droids in Star Wars, they serve a purpose. They do something that humans don't want to do.
Yeah, they all have a job.
Yeah, they all have a job.
They're not there to be your buddy, but some of them are.
Right. And then in Star Trek, like Data, he's like, he pretty much is like a walking computer. Like he calculates things ridiculously quickly. And however, I mean, it's interesting when they further along in the show where they actually talk about and they show where he was born and he meets his father, which is a human that looks just like him. So they sort of go back to like the Christian notion that like God made human in his likeness or whatever. But I mean, but it just proves the point of what you're talking about. Like we make things in our own image or as a reflection of some aspect of ourselves.
Right. And that made me think, is Edward Scissorhands artificial intelligence? Vincent Price is his dad, but he really is his creator. We don't know what's inside of him because we see them at some point flipping through the book and showing the progression. He doesn't get to finish the progression of things, but how did he... I mean, it's a Tim Burton movie, so it's all whimsical and magical, but maybe he is too, because he's obviously lacking a lot of information or a lot of aspects of a human.
I think...
But then he learns some things too.
He kind of... Edward Scissorhands, to me, is very similar to Frankenstein. You know, where Dr. Frankenstein creates this monster.
Yeah.
But the monster is a bunch of humans that are put together into one being.
Turns out it was man!
Right. Yeah, and who's the monster? And I think...
Right.
I think that Frankenstein is the ultimate... I mean, if Mary Shelley had been born later, her story, or, you know, if the timeline were shifted, she's probably like, I mean, that's like the ultimate sci-fi. She probably would have been writing about androids.
I think so.
You know,
if
instead of
had some,
putting a man together.
Yeah, a little bit more knowledge.
Right. They just hadn't been thought about yet, I don't think, I assume.
At that point, I don't believe so. I don't know. Because at that point, I think in terms of sci-fi, it would have had to have come from another world. Mm-hmm, like be an alien or something like that. Like, that would probably be the extent of that.
Yeah.
But it's hard to tell. Yeah, because I think that that's a big way that sci-fi has changed, too, is that over the years, we've had some similar ideas about what scares us and what we would like to see, but how they arrive is different. So where it would have been, they came from space, and they're robots, and they're robots from space, and they're smart. And now it's like, oh, now we've created them, and that's the plot. So,
and you know, in that, I think it's frequently a conversation about the other. You know, something that, I mean, and, you know, immigrants, or, you know, we sometimes, if the robots are good, we make them look like us. If the robots are bad, we make them look like...
Cybermen from Doctor Who. They're bad and mean, and we don't like them, so they're very clunky. But I know that there were other similar things, even on Doctor Who, that did not look like...
Well, Daleks,
big, I mean... chunky... Well, oh my, Daleks. I mean,
Daleks, like just... Yeah.
Or big, like... fire hydrant with a plunger sticking out of it.
Yes. Yeah. With big acne skirt.
Yeah.
Acne lobs. I truly find the androids and all of these AI even the movie AI with the little boy where they what was the story about? Where they created a little boy because they couldn't have one or something like that. I mean, that movie actually is like heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I mean, he's at the bottom of... I haven't seen it in ages, so I mean, I really can't go too far into the conversation. But like, he's like, the world is destroyed or something like that. He's at the bottom of water. I mean, for the most part, though, like nearly every single story that has droids or androids, robots in it, I particularly find a lot of empathy with those beings. And that, to me, and my reaction to these things in movies is also a form of self-study.
Right. What is
my reaction.
Yeah. What is it that makes us feel those emotions for maybe one robot versus another robot?
Yeah.
Like for Ash, in terms of Alien, he sacrifices himself for a human. So was that something that he was programmed to do, or is that something that he learned to do? So we feel pretty strong emotions about Ash for doing that, but what about, you know, I think of like, even like, I don't know, I'd be really, I get sad if anything bad happens to R2-D2, but just like kind of changing that back to maybe like a Dalek.
Right.
If something bad happens to a Dalek, it's like, that's right, you stupid trash can.
Right. Although I think, don't Daleks have little beings inside of them? I think they do.
They have their main master, who's this alien dude that lives inside of it, but I don't know if they all have that.
Yeah, I don't know.
He's got like pointy ears and he's got a really big head. But that's from like the 50s?
Yeah.
something like that, and they've never changed that.
No.
Yeah.
No, that's fast. Yeah, Daleks are, yeah. Yeah, what else?
So I guess it just takes us back to how we can look at our own kind of negative side. So we were talking before about the idea of Saucha and the human mind, the human body. So it was more of a purity thing, which does that even exist? So when we talk about cleansing ourselves of negative thoughts, anger, things like hate or prejudice, can we really even do that? Do we really want to? I mean, there are some things, hate, prejudice, things like that, that doesn't serve us. But if it's in there,
Yeah.
and you learn something through self-study.
Yeah. Avoiding, we talk a lot about, avoiding is never the answer.
No.
You look at it, you recognize it, acknowledge it, and then you say, okay, and then you learn from it. And you don't necessarily need to be so hard on yourself and be like, okay, this is bad. I was,
right,
a bad person for feeling this way. A lot of people now, not only with, the Me Too thing, but prior to that, Black Lives Matter, recognizing, okay, we all might have some form of implicit bias.
We absolutely do, yeah.
And
everybody
acknowledge
does.
it. And some of it is, maybe it's the way that we were raised, it's the way that media portrays things. Mm-hmm. And if you acknowledge that it can exist, mm-hmm. when you say something, or maybe prior to saying something or doing something, acknowledge the fact or stop and think, do I have some implicit bias going
right.
on? Am I coming from a place of white privilege?
Right.
And acknowledging that and just saying, maybe even verbally acknowledging,
yeah, don't sit around beating yourself up. Think about it and think, well, okay, I acknowledge this. This might be a problem. What do I do now?
right.
So it's not passive.
Right.
It's not passive. It's not burn the badness out of my brain and pretend it never happened, or the other side of that, berate myself and
Yeah.
go on about how awful I am and how much I hate myself. That's not going to help anybody either. Take it, study it, learn from it, figure out what you can do.
Yeah, take some ownership for the thing.
Yeah, and we do all have implicit bias. For those of you that want to figure out what your implicit bias is, there's the implicit. You can just Google implicit bias test Harvard.
Yep.
There are a lot of different ones. It just tests your reactions. Go take a few. Yeah, that's your challenge, Yoga Rebels. Go take a few. There's a lot of different ones. So there's ones about race. There's ones about religion. There's
body size, right?
There's a body size one. They keep
obese
adding to them. There's one about disabilities. So yeah, I would encourage everybody to go check that out and go for maybe one that seems a little bit less obvious.
Yeah.
There's a gay, straight one. There's a lot of them. But if you take it and you find out, because they'll list you have a preference for this group versus that group. And then it'll say if it's a strong preference or something along those lines. If you find that you have a preference for a thing and you don't want to have a preference for that thing, just think about it.
Right, yeah. Don't get defensive. Don't say, oh, this thing must be wrong.
Right. I'm not a racist. Guess what? Pretty much everybody is. Mm-hmm. And we just need to figure out ways to work through that, work around it, work with it, and learn and grow from it. It's not, it doesn't serve anyone to sit around and say, well, no, I'm not.
Yeah, denial is useless.
I'm a nice person. It's when people are like, but I have a gay friend or I have a black friend.
Right.
Don't be that person.
Right, no. I have an android friend.
Oh, I wish I did.
I do too.
I would brag about it a lot, actually.
Yeah.
And then everybody would be like, what are you, droidist?
Lauren only likes droids.
Yeah, I have an implicit bias against humans. Sorry, humans.
I mean, sometimes we are an invasive species.
We sure are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what does that say? That could open up a whole other episode. Like, who's really the bad guy? Because usually it's kind of the human.
It's usually us.
Yeah, because if the android does something that's really awful, like a human
made the android.
made the android do that, yeah. So if you give it all of these capabilities, just trace anything bad they do back to you. Like, any of the replicants in the first Blade Runner do some murdering. They do some murders.
It is murdering.
So, okay, so then everybody's angry at the droid, but what about the guy that made the droid? He made them capable of murdering humans.
Yep.
I blame him.
Yep.
I blame the Tyrell Corporation.
It's true.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed this, please click like or subscribe, and please go to patreon.com/yogarebels, become a patron, help support us. We would love it. It might help us get closer to our goal of taking lightsaber lessons.
Yeah, that needs to happen, and you want it to happen because you'll get to see it, and you'll get to see me possibly make a fool of myself or be really cool.
Amazing.
I don't know which one.
We'll get to learn that Lauren is actually a Jedi.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. And so, what we say is, keep the rebellion alive.